Bien. La 5e séance plénière.
The 5th plenary meeting of the High-Level International Conference for the Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution is resumed. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished heads of state and government, ministers, Your Excellency António Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations Organization, Your Excellency Annalena Baerbock, President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a privilege for me to co-chair alongside the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia this conference in accordance with General Assembly Resolution 79/81 dated 3rd December 2024. We wish to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you. Allow me now to deliver some opening remarks.
Madame la Présidente de
President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, Heads of State and Government, ladies and gentlemen. We've gathered here because the time has come. The time has come to free the 48 hostages detained by Hamas. The time has come to stop war, the bombing in Gaza, the massacres and the fleeing people. The time has come because there's a pressing urgency everywhere. The time for peace has come because we're just a few moments away from no longer being able to seize peace. This is why we have gathered here today. Some might say it's too late. Others might say it's too early. But one thing is certain. We can no longer wait. In 1947, this assembly decided on the splitting of mandatory Palestine across two states, a Jewish state and an Arab state, thus recognizing the right of each of them to self-determination. The international community granted to the state of Israel at last fulfilling the destiny of this people after millennia of roaming and persecution, and Israel founded a beautiful democracy there. The promise of an Arab state to date remains unfulfilled. Since then, there's been a long path of hope and despair intertwined, which Israelis and Palestinians have gone down, each in their own way. We have walked alongside them, each of us in keeping with our history and our sensibilities. But the truth is that we bear a collective responsibility for, to date, having failed to build just and lasting peace in the Middle East. This is what became evident to us on the 7th of October 2023, when the Israeli people suffered the worst terrorist attack in its history. 1,224 men, women, and children killed, 4,834 men, women, and children injured, 251 men, women, and children taken hostage. The cruelty of Hamas and all those who collaborated in this massacre dumbfounded Israel and astounded the world. The 7th of October remains an open wound for the Israeli soul and for our universal conscience. We condemn it unequivocally because nothing, never, nowhere can justify having recourse to terrorism. Minds go out and hearts go out to the victims and their families. We've expressed our compassion to all Israelis and first and foremost demand for all hostages still held by Hamas to be freed unconditionally. The French paid tribute to the 51 French men and women assassinated on that day and all other victims of October 7th. We will never forget them. Never. Just like we will never stop the existential fight against anti-Semitism. The French people know the sting of terrorism, and our hearts remember the expression of the bonds of brotherhood following the terrorist attacks committed in Paris on the 7th of January 2015, when dozens of foreign leaders were in the ranks of those offering their sympathies, among which the Israeli Prime Minister and the President of the Palestinian Authority. We know that you cannot show weakness in the face of terrorism, but we also know the perils of endless wars. We know that right must always prevail over might. We know from our own history that a universal commitment to peace, is the legacy of centuries gone by and the only way towards salvation. And on behalf of our friendship with Israel, our commitment to which has never faltered in the name of our friendship with the Palestinian people, for whom we want the initial promise of the UN Charter to be fulfilled, we want two states living side by side in peace and security to become a reality. However, currently Israel is further extending its military operation in Gaza with the stated objective of destroying Hamas. But there are hundreds of thousands of people who have been displaced, injured, famished, traumatized. Their lives are still being destroyed. Although Hamas has been considerably weakened, and despite the fact that negotiations on a permanent ceasefire are the surest means of ensuring the release of hostages, nothing justifies the ongoing war in Gaza. Nothing. On the contrary, everything compels us to definitively end it, since we didn't do it earlier. We must do this to save lives. The lives of Israeli hostages detained in atrocious conditions, the lives of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian civilians who are tormented by hunger, suffering, the fear of dying, mourning for their loved ones. We must save all lives, because for almost 2 years now, it is the denial of the humanity of the other and the sacrifice of human life which have prevailed. Yes, since the 7th of October, it is the life of the other that is being denied. We've been saying this since the first day of the war in Gaza. A life is a life. I know this because I held in my arms the families of hostages I met in Tel Aviv and in Paris. I'm thinking of the mother of Eata David, a hostage who was famished and displaced. I'm thinking of Nimrod Cohen, a 19-year-old hostage whose father I just met. I also know this because I was at the bedside of the Palestinian victims of Israeli military operations, refugees in Al Arish, women and children. I will never forget the way they looked at me. I know this because I met young people from Gaza who we are hosting in France. I'm thinking of Rida Baroud, who should have been with us today, who continues to bear witness to the distress of her loved ones in Gaza. A life is a life. We are duty-bound, all of us, to protect each other. This duty is indivisible, just as our common humanity is indivisible. There is a solution, a way of breaking the cycle of war and destruction. It lies in the recognition of the other, of his and her legitimacy, humanity, and dignity. We must reopen our eyes and see human faces there where war has deposited the mask of the enemy or the marks of a target. We must recognize that Palestinians and Israelis are living in twin solitude. The solitude of the Israelis following the historic nightmare of the 7th of October 2023, and the solitude of Palestinians. Palestinians at their wits' end in the face of this ceaseless war. The time has come. Because the worst could still come to pass. The sacrifice of more civilians, the expulsion of the people of Gaza to Egypt, the annexation of the West Bank, the death of hostages detained by Hamas, or facts on the ground which could irreversibly change the situation there on the ground. This is why, this is the very reason that today, here in this chamber, We must pave the way for peace, because since July of last year, developments have accelerated. And at this point, we have reason to fear that the Abraham Accords, the Camp David Accords, could be called into question by Israel, and that peace would become impossible for a long time yet in the Middle East. It thus falls to us this historic responsibility. We must do everything within our power to preserve the very possibility of a two-state solution. Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. The time has come. This is why, true to the historic commitment of my country to the Middle East, to peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, this is why I declare that today France recognizes the state of Palestine.
Cette reconnaissance
This recognition is a way of affirming that the Palestinian people is not a people too many. On the contrary, this is a people who never says goodbye to anything, as Mahmoud Darwish said. A people with a strong history, roots, and dignity. The recognition of the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people takes nothing away from the rights of the people of Israel, who France supported from day one, and to the respect of which it is staunchly committed. This is why we're so convinced that this recognition is the only solution that will allow for Israel to live in peace. France has never wavered standing by Israel's side, even when its security was at stake, including when there were Iranian airstrikes. This recognition of the state of Palestine is a defeat for Hamas, just like for all those who foment anti-Semitism, nurture anti-Zionist obsessions, and who want the destruction of the state of Israel. This recognition by France goes hand in hand with others which will be announced today, and I thank them: Andorra, Australia, Belgium, Canada, Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, Portugal, the United Kingdom, San Marino. They are here today. They answered our call issued in July and took the responsible choice, the necessary choice, the choice to opt for peace. Spain, Ireland, Norway, and Sweden are also going down the same path, and many others did before us too. This recognition paves the way for useful negotiations, useful for Israelis and Palestinians. This path is a path towards a peace and security plan for all. France and Saudi Arabia submitted this plan to this assembly, and it adopted it by a large majority. It carries our common ambition to break the spiral of violence and to change the situation on the ground. We managed to take a step towards one another, to move away from our habitual stances and to set concrete objectives. We must now set in motion a cycle of peace that meets the needs of all parties. The top priority of this peace and security plan, and it's very urgent, that is to ensure the release of 48 hostages and put an end to military operations throughout the territory of Gaza. I commend the efforts undertaken by Qatar, Egypt, and the US to achieve this. I ask Israel to do nothing more that would thwart these efforts coming to fruition. Hamas was vanquished on the military front as we neutralized its leaders and decision makers. It must also be vanquished politically to be truly dismantled. As soon as a ceasefire is agreed, we must mount a massive collective effort to provide assistance to the people of Gaza. I'd like to thank Egypt and Jordan for their commitment and recall Israel's absolute obligation, that is to facilitate humanitarian access to Gaza to assist its population, which has lost everything. The second priority is to stabilize and to rebuild Gaza. A transition administration incorporating the Palestinian Authority, as well as the young people of Palestine, together with security forces, the establishment of which we will accelerate, will have the monopoly over security in Gaza. It will implement the dismantlement and disarmament of Hamas, and this with the support of international partners and the necessary means required for this difficult mission. France stands ready to contribute to an international stabilization mission, as well as to support, together with our European partners, the establishment and equipping of Palestinian security forces. As soon as negotiations permit, the Security Council could decide to deploy a civilian and security support mission, liaising with the Palestinian authorities and with the consent of the Israeli authorities. Furthermore, it'll be up to the state of Palestine to give hope to its people, tested by years of violence and occupation, division and negligence. It will be up to the state of Palestine to give its people a framework for democratic expression, a framework that's been renewed and that is secure. President Mahmoud Abbas committed to this before Prince Mohammed bin Salman and myself. He forcefully condemned the terrorist attacks committed on the 7th of October 2023. He reiterated his commitment to disarming Hamas and committed to excluding Hamas from future governance in Gaza, as well as from future governance throughout Palestinian territory. He reaffirmed his commitment to combating hate speech and promised an in-depth overhaul of Palestinian governance. France will pay close attention to the full implementation of all of the commitments made to us. This renewed Palestinian Authority is a necessary prerequisite for the success of the indispensable negotiations we'll need to resume to come to an agreement on each of the final status issues. It's within this framework that I will be able to decide to open an embassy to the state of Palestine as soon as all of the hostages detained in Gaza have been freed and a ceasefire has been established. What France will be demanding of Israel will be just as considerable. Together with our European partners, we will be pegging, that is, our level of cooperation with Israel to the provisions, the measures Israel will be taking to put an end to the war and negotiate peace. It's thanks to this path that we will get a state of Palestine which is sovereign, independent, and demilitarized, bringing together all of its territories, recognizing Israel and being recognized by Israel in a region which will at last see peace reign upon it. What I also expect of our Arab and Muslim partners who have not yet done so is for them to uphold their commitment to recognize the state of Israel and to engage with Israel in normal relations as soon as the state of Palestine has been established. In so doing, together we will demonstrate dual recognition for the benefit of peace and security of all in the Middle East. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our peace plan. It establishes a demanding mechanism to end the war and enter into the negotiations phase. It allows for Israeli-Palestinian peace to be the first pillar of a new peace and security architecture in the Near East and the Middle East. It lends credibility to the possibility of further economic integration. Nothing will be possible unless the Palestinian authorities take full ownership of our renewed ambition so that we can at last achieve the two-state solution. I know that they're reluctant. I know that they harbor fears. And with the utmost respect, I hear the Israeli people, their sadness, their fatigue. But I want for the Israeli authorities to also hear this and to in turn take on commitments. I know that the Israeli people and the Israeli leadership have the strength to do this. I remember when I was a young man, when I learned of the horrible assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, almost 30 years ago. He was killed for wanting peace. When death was about to claim him, the heroic warrior of the State of Israel said, and I quote, I fought so long as there was no chance of peace," end of quote. But today, there is such a chance. Today, here, 142 states are proposing this peace. They're extending out their hands, ready to be shaken. So yes, the time has come to put an end to the war in Gaza. Massacres, death, right now. Urgency is what drives us. The time has come for Israel to live in peace and security, from the Galilee to the Red Sea, through the Dead Sea and the Lake of Tiberias and Jerusalem. The time has come to no longer talk about the existence of the State of Israel. It's self-evident. The time has come to do justice to the Palestinian people and thus to recognize the State of Palestine, a brotherly country, a neighbor in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in Jerusalem. The time has come to cast out from these lands the vile face of terrorism and to forge peace. Yes, to forge peace. This is what has brought us here today. And we're very hopeful that we will be able to forge it. It is a choice we must make. It is our duty. Peace is much more difficult. It demands much more of us than all wars. The time has come.
Merci pour votre attention.
Thank you for your kind attention. I now invite His Royal Highness, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Saudi Arabia. He will be speaking on behalf of His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdullah Al Saud, Crown Prince and Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, Your Excellency, President of the Republic of France, Your Excellency, Secretary General, Your Excellency, President of the General Assembly, distinguished guests. God, peace and blessings be upon you. I have the honor to deliver the statement of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as a co-chair of this conference on behalf of His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdullah Al Saud, Crown Prince and Prime Minister of the Kingdom. It is my pleasure to convey to you the greetings of His Majesty King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, the custodian of the two holy mosques, and his wishes along with the Crown Prince's wishes for the success of this conference. We thank His Excellency President Macron and His Excellency António Guterres for their efforts towards achieving the two-state solution. We thank him also for recognizing the State of Palestine. This conference is convened under the joint and co-chaired by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and France. At a time when the Israeli occupation authorities continues their aggression and their brutal crimes against our brothers, the Palestinians in Gaza Strip, and its violations in the West Bank and Al-Quds al-Sharif, and its repeated attacks on the sovereignty of Arab and Muslim countries, the latest of which was the attack against Qatar. This underlines the insistence of Israel to continue with its aggressive practices that threaten regional and international peace and stability and undermine efforts of peace in the region. This reiterates our deeply rooted conviction that the implementation of the two-state solution is the only way to achieve just and permanent peace. The historic position of His Excellency, the French President, to recognize the State of Palestine, and the fact that many countries have taken the similar courageous position and the broad support for the resolution of the General Assembly to adopt the declaration, the New York Declaration on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution that received 142 votes in its favor reflects the will of the international community to render justice to the Palestinian people and consolidate their legal, historic right in line with international frameworks, relevant UN resolutions, and the Arab Peace Initiative. The Kingdom is keen on continuing its partnership with France and all countries calling for peace to follow up on the implementation of the outcomes of this conference, to put an end to the war in Gaza and stop all unilateral measures that threaten Palestinian sovereignty, to work on ending the conflict in the region and establish the Palestinian independent state on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. In conclusion, we thank again those countries that have recognized or have announced their intention to recognize the state of Palestine. We call all other countries to take a similar historic step that will have a great impact on supporting the efforts towards the implementation of the two-state solution, achieve permanent and comprehensive peace in the Middle East, and find a new reality whereby the region can enjoy peace, stability, and prosperity. Thank you.
Je remercie
I thank His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman Abdulaziz Al Saud. I now invite His Excellency Mr. António Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations Organization, to issue a statement.
Distinguished co-chairs, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the Government of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this international conference on implementing the two-state solution. I also want to acknowledge the Palestinian delegation and once again note my disappointment that they were denied the opportunity to be fully represented. Excellencies, let's have no illusions. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has gone unresolved for generations. Dialogue has faltered. Resolutions have been flouted. International law has been breached. Decades of diplomacy have come up short. The situation is intolerable and it is deteriorating by the hour. We are here today to help navigate the only way out of this nightmare, a two-state solution, where two independent, sovereign, democratic states, Israel and Palestine, live side by side in peace and security with their secure and recognized borders on the basis of pre-1967 lines, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states, in line with international law, UN resolutions, and other relevant agreements. I welcome the measures many member states are taking to galvanize support for the two-state solution, including the pledges to recognize the state of Palestine. And I welcome the General Assembly's endorsement of the New York Declaration. Excellencies, nothing can justify the horrific 7 October terror attacks by Hamas or the taking of hostages, both of which I have repeatedly condemned. And nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people or any form of ethnic cleansing. The systematic decimation of Gaza, the starvation of the population, the killing of tens of thousands of civilians, most of them women and children, and hundreds of our own humanitarians. I call once again for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, and the immediate, full, safe, unconditional, and unhindered humanitarian access. Excellencies, nothing can also excuse developments in the West Bank that pose an existential threat to a two-state solution. The relentless expansion of settlements, the creeping threat of annexation, the intensification of settler violence, all of it must stop. The situation is morally, legally, and politically intolerable. We must recommit ourselves to the two-state solution before it is too late. A solution in which two independent, contiguous, democratic, viable, and sovereign states are mutually recognized and fully integrated into the international community. Excellencies, those who stand in the way are obligated to answer a fundamental question. What is the alternative? A one-state scenario where Palestinians are denied basic rights, expelled from their homes and their land, forced to live under perpetual occupation, discrimination, and subjugation? How is this possible in the 21st century? How is it acceptable? This is neither peace nor justice. It will only increase the growing isolation of Israel on the global stage. And let's be clear, statehood for the Palestinians is a right, not a reward. And denying statehood would be a gift to extremists everywhere. Without two states, there will be no peace in the Middle East, and radicalism will spread around the world.
Excellencies, this conference must mark a turning point. It must pave the way for irreversible progress, to put an end to the illegal occupation and to make good on our collective aspiration for a two-state solution. All of this is fully in line with adherence to international law. It has been approved by the General Assembly and supported by the international community. It is the only credible path towards a just and lasting peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and the only credible path towards peace and security throughout the Middle East as a whole. This will demand difficult decisions be taken from us all. This will demand courage and leadership based on principles from all sides. I urge you to do everything in your power to allow the two-state solution to prevail. This for the peoples of Israel, Palestine, and for humankind as a whole. I thank you. I thank the Secretary General of the United Nations Organization. I now invite Her Excellency Annalena Baerbock, President of the General Assembly, to make a statement.
Your Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, Your Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Your Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies. Taking over the presidency of the General Assembly, I received many letters. One moved me deeply. Attached to it were drawings by 3 Palestinian children, Remas, Enas, and Retal. The images were heartbreaking. One showed a school before and after, beneath a bright sun and a blue, clear sky. In the first, the school with open doors and happiness. In the second, their school lies in rubble. A lone boy stands on the debris of what must be once have been his safe place. Perhaps he had a favorite class, a favorite teacher, like our children, a best friend he played with there. Now, all of it is gone. All of the laughter of the children blown away. At that age, children should not be drawing pictures of war. Children should be learning mathematics. They should be playing with friends and scratch dragons or castles, not death and destruction. Yet, for the children of Gaza, this is their reality. Their horror lasted and lasts for over 700 days. Tens of thousands have lost their lives. Tens of thousands of dreams which never will come true. So many killed without the world even learning their names. Until we heard one voice so loud we could not overhear it. The voice of Hind Rajab, captured in a phone call with the red crescents while shelling rained down. After the car she was in was attacked, over and over again, killing her aunt, uncle, and 3 of her cousins next to her. She called over and over again, "I'm so scared, please come." The rescuers tried to calm her as they tried to reach her. They could not. Hind was killed before help arrived. The world failed her. As the world has also failed Queer Abbas and his brother Ariel. Queer was just 9 months old, the youngest child abducted by Hamas on October 7th, taken with his 4-year-old brother Ariel and their mother. Both were killed in Gaza by terrorists. The world will remember their names as symbols of innocent childhood stolen by terror. I've met with the families of the hostages, fathers, mothers, siblings, aunts, grandparents, still waiting for their loved ones to come home from wherever Hamas is holding them after more than 700 days. I've also met with Palestinian families, fathers, mothers, siblings, aunts, and grandparents, whose loved ones are buried in the ruins of Gaza. Their message is always the same: we want peace. Or as one Israeli mother told me, "It does not bring my child back if a Palestinian mother loses her child in Gaza." Humanity is not about choosing sides. It's about recognizing that every life matters the same. A life is a life. A Palestinian girl's life is a life. An Israeli boy's life is a life. All the children of the Middle East deserve to grow up knowing only the sun shining on their schools, the laughter of their friends in the playground, and the joy of a meal shared with their families. Not the horrors of starvation, not the horrors of war and terror. Excellencies, the General Assembly has been very clear. We need an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire in Gaza now. Israel must immediately facilitate the full, rapid, safe, and unhindered entry and delivery of humanitarian assistance to all Palestinian civilians. Hamas must immediately and unconditionally release all remaining hostages. But the horrors of Gaza make equally clear that we cannot allow such devastation to happen again. While the situation in Gaza is unacceptable, settlement expansions and demolitions in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, are eroding any prospects for a political solution. The decade-long Israeli-Palestinian conflict cannot be resolved by endless war, permanent occupation, and recurrent terror. The only way to ensure that future generations of both Palestinians and Israelis can live in peace, security, and dignity is the two-state solution. As the Secretary General said, it's a right, not a reward, to live in your own state, as all humans around the world. We know that some think this is naive. The first resolution on this matter is almost as old as this organization. 78 years ago, the General Assembly adopted Resolution 181, laying the foundation for two states, knowing it's the only way for peace. And to those of you who argue now, but we have tried for decades and failed over and over again, there can be only one answer. If we would stop aiming for what is right because we have not succeeded yet, then evil would prevail. That would be the end of this institution. This institution which promised to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. It would erode the UN's foundational mission to achieve peace, justice, and equal rights for both Israelis and Palestinians. Excellencies, that is what today's conference and the New York Declaration are so crucial. The message we are sending today is no, we are not giving up. The international community does not only remain committed to the two-state solution, we are also identifying tangible, time-bound, and irreversible steps for its realization. And we are willing to take decisive measures and provide international guarantees. Of course, this conference and the New York Declaration will face criticism. Some will say a piece of paper cannot change realities on the grounds for Palestinians. Others will dismiss the vision of two states outright. But the fact remains, the New York Declaration was endorsed by 142 member states. And this majority clearly says the war in Gaza must end now. It condemns the attacks committed by Hamas against civilians on 7th of October. It condemns the attacks by Israel against civilians and civilian infrastructure in Gaza. It calls on Hamas to end its rule in Gaza and hand over its weapons. A sovereign and viable state of Palestine needs to be established, living side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security, with mutually recognized borders and full regional integration. Excellencies, the call for peace and the two-state solution is not an abstract. Not for the children watching missiles destroy their school. Not for the families waiting for news that their sons and daughters might be released from captivity. Not for the UN staff in Gaza who have witnessed their colleagues shot. Not for those who have been injured or maimed and will have to live with the trauma of this conflict for the rest of their life. It's an aspiration, but it's also an obligation. We owe it to the memory of Fint, Krier, and Ariel, and the many, many others. And we owe it to the children like Remas, Enas, and Rital, and all the children of Palestine and all the children of Israel, hoping for a better tomorrow, so that they may not inherit rubble, grief, and despair, but safety, dignity, and hope, to live one day in peace, side by side.
Je remercie Madame.
I thank the President of the General Assembly. I now invite His Excellency Mahmoud Abbas, President of the State of Palestine, to deliver a statement via video conference.
Thank you. Your Excellency, President Emmanuel Macron, Your Royal Highness, Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, Your Highness Prince Saud Faisal bin Farhan, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Your Excellency, António Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished leaders and heads of delegations, peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you. On behalf of the State of Palestine, I would like to express my deepest appreciation for the co-presidency, the United Nations, and all participating states for the historic New York Declaration that was issued during July's conference and adopted by the General Assembly by an overwhelming majority. It marked the beginning of an irreversible path towards ending the humanitarian catastrophe and ending occupation pursuant to international legitimacy and the Arab Peace Initiative. It was the embodiment of an independent state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital, living side by side with Israel in peace, security, and good neighborliness. The declaration stressed that the war against our people must come to an immediate and durable end. It noted that the crimes emanating from the siege, the starvation, and destruction cannot be a means of achieving security. Therefore, we call for a permanent ceasefire. We need to ensure humanitarian access through the United Nations and UNRWA. We need to guarantee the release of hostages, all hostages and prisoners, with the withdrawal of the occupation forces from Gaza. We need a start without delay of Gaza and the West Bank reconstruction through the Cairo International Conference. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to commend the Egyptian-Qatari-US mediation that tries to put an end to this war. We also commend the positions of Egypt and Jordan, who reject the displacement of Palestinians, a matter rejected by the international community as well. The State of Palestine is the only entity eligible to assume full responsibility for governance and security in Gaza. This comes through an interim administrative committee affiliated to the Palestinian government in the West Bank with Arab and international support and participation. Hamas will have no role in governing. Hamas and other factions must surrender their weapons to the Palestinian Authority. What we want is one unified state without weapons, a state with one law and one legitimate security forces. We stress our condemnation of the occupation's crimes. We also condemn the killing and detention of civilians, including Hamas's actions on October the 7th, 2023. On the other hand, we call for an end to the settlements, the annexation, settlers' terrorism, and the attacks against Islamic and Christian holy sites. We condemn the occupation policies that isolate Jerusalem, Al-Quds, and expand construction on Area E1. We condemn the narrative, the Israeli narrative on Greater Israel, which flouts international law. It represents a direct threat to Arab national security and international peace. This comes in addition to the brutal aggression against the sovereignty of the brotherly state of Qatar and other Arab countries. This necessitates a firm, deterrent international stance. Ladies and gentlemen, the State of Palestine continues to adopt a comprehensive reform agenda promoting governance, transparency, the rule of law, and the reform of the financial system. It also works on the reform of educational curriculum in line with the UNESCO standards, and this will be achieved within 2 years. We're establishing a unified social welfare system after the abolition of all previous payments to the families of prisoners and martyrs. This system is currently undergoing international audit by a specialized international firm. We underline our commitment to organize presidential and parliamentary elections after the end of the war, and within 1 year. We will draft an interim constitution within 3 months to ensure the transfer of power from the authority to the state. This will ensure that no party or individual will participate unless they adhere to the political program and the international commitments of the Palestine Liberation Organization and the rules of international legitimacy. The elections will be held under international observance. Ladies and gentlemen, we desire a modern democratic state based on the rule of law, pluralism, power sharing, equality, justice, and the empowerment of women and youth. We commend the positions of those countries that recognized the State of Palestine. We call on those who have not yet done so to follow suit. We call for your support so that Palestine become a full-fledged member of the United Nations. We have already recognized the right of Israel to existence in 1988 and in 1993, and we still recognize the State of Israel. In this vein, I would like to thank France, Britain, Canada, Australia, and Belgium, in addition to Portugal, Luxembourg, San Marino, and Andorra, and other countries that have been mentioned by His Excellency, the President of France.
And we recall with appreciation all 149 countries who have already recognized the State of Palestine earlier. They have participated in our long struggle, the last of which was Spain, Ireland, Norway, Slovenia, and Armenia. We would also like to commend the important role of the presidency of this conference, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and France, as well as Britain, in galvanizing more international recognition. We'd also like to thank all participating countries in this conference for their important role, issuing the New York Declaration and taking irreversible steps to bring about durable peace based on the two-state solution and based on international legitimacy.
We would also like to commend the role of the brotherly and friendly countries that support our Palestinian cause in the international fora. We would like to commend, in particular, the role of Algeria, which is assuming the Arab seat in the Security Council. We commend the positions of the peoples and organizations that support the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people to freedom, independence, and statehood. We reject any confusion, I repeat, any confusion between the solidarity with the Palestinian cause and the issue of anti-Semitism. We reject the latter, proceeding from our values and principles. We would also like to express our readiness to work with the US President Donald Trump, with Saudi Arabia, France, and the United Nations and all partners to implement the peace plan adopted during this conference within a specific timetable with international guarantees and monitoring. This would open the gates towards a just peace and comprehensive regional cooperation. In this regard, I call upon Israel to immediately sit on the negotiating table to put an end to this bloodshed and bring about just and comprehensive peace. And I address the Israeli people saying, our future and yours banks on peace. Enough violence and war. Our generations deserve to enjoy freedom and security. Let the people in our region live in durable peace and good neighborliness. And I would like to seize this opportunity to address all the Jews in the world, wishing them a good new year. And to our patient Palestinian people in their homeland and everywhere, I would like to tell you that the dawn of freedom and liberty is coming, no doubt. That day, ladies and gentlemen, is the day of the state of Palestine and the start of the peace process in the Middle East. We hope that we will call very soon to an international conference that will bring about this matter. Peace and blessings of God be upon you.
Je remercie le président.
I thank the President of the State of Palestine. Excellencies, distinguished representatives, before suspending the formal proceedings of the conference, we would ask you to kindly remain seated for the next part of this afternoon's program. This meeting is suspended.
Nous allons à présent
We will now listen to statements made by heads of state and government, including by the co-chairs of the working groups. They will present tangible efforts made to implement the New York Declaration. I remind you that this Assembly endorsed the New York Declaration by a vast majority to the tune of 142 votes. We remind delegations that statements are limited to 5 minutes for heads of state and government, and those by ministers should be limited to 3 minutes. Microphones will be cut off automatically after these time limits have been exceeded. I now give the floor to the King of Jordan, Your Majesty.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Friends, I thank France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this meeting. We meet here at the UN, where every country, every people are promised a voice. We meet to raise our voices for peace and for justice, for the only path to ensuring security for the Middle East and beyond the two-state solution. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. Almost every year since, our countries have met within these halls to decry the injustice and violence of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and seek solutions. And now, for nearly 2 years, we have been witnesses to a horrific level of bloodshed and destruction in Gaza. It stands in flagrant violations of international laws and the values of our shared humanity, and it threatens the foundations of future peace. The war in Gaza must end. Humanitarian aid must flow unhindered, and all illegal and unilateral measures in the West Bank and settler violence must also end. A clear choice stands before us. On one side, to continue down the dark and bloody path of war and conflict, or to take the path of peace through the two-state solution. And today, the world is taking a significant step on the path to achieving just and lasting peace. This global rally behind the two-state solution sends a clear message. The conflict must end. The two-state solution is the only path to the just and lasting peace that fulfills the rights of all our peoples. We thank all countries that have recognized the state of Palestine, and now we must work to stop all measures that undermine the two-state solution. We must make sure that today is a step in a continued effort to realize it. As we work on ending the war in Gaza, we must also do all we can to restore hope. The commitment so many countries are making to a future of peace today begins that long, difficult, but essential process. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I thank His Majesty the King of Jordan. I now give the floor to the President of Turkey.
Sayın Devlet
Excellencies, heads of state and government, His Excellency the Secretary General, esteemed delegation members, let me greet you all with most heartfelt feelings and with kind regards. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to France and to Saudi Arabia, who are co-chairing this conference. I congratulate all the countries that have decided to recognize the state of Palestine for honoring the voice of justice and of conscience. I hope that this step, along with the initiatives to be undertaken in the coming period, will accelerate the implementation of a two-state solution. In our region, an unprecedented catastrophe has been unfolding for nearly 2 years now under the Israeli government's heavy and inhumane attacks. The massacre and brutality in Gaza continues with all its intensity. Since it is true that anyone who has a conscience cannot possibly accept this or remain silent vis-à-vis all this, the Netanyahu government is trying to make sure the following. Their goal is to make the establishment of a Palestinian state impossible and to force the Palestinian people to emigrate as much as possible. In the midst of these negative developments of a group of countries, among them members of the UN Security Council, they have taken the decision to recognize the state of Palestine, and this is an extremely significant and historic step. Now, we wholeheartedly wish we could see Palestinian President Mr. Abbas to be able to speak in this conference here today. Nevertheless, I find it extremely valuable that all the participants speaking today are also serving as the voice of the Palestinian people. It is also a fact that today the Palestinian cause has become a global issue. The participation in this hall today is the most important proof of this. In Europe, in Asia, the Americas, and Africa, we are witnessing people chanting "Free Palestine" on the streets, on social media, or in the press more than ever before now. This contradiction should not escape anyone's attention, including my friends here. The Netanyahu government governs today a society who, in the past, was targeted for eradication with the persecutions of the Holocaust. And today, his government is committing genocide against its own neighbors with whom they have shared the same land, the same water, air, and sea for thousands of years. Standing up against this oppression is not only a legal duty of the international community, but also a moral responsibility. The international community must stop expansionism in the West Bank, also the fait accompli in East Jerusalem, and the attempts to spread instability in the region. Otherwise, we cannot possibly talk about the presence of an international order or talk about defending universal values. The goal of deepening occupation and annexation policies is clear. The goal is to kill the vision of a two-state solution, to leave no ground for the state of Palestine to survive, to exile the Palestinian people, and to implement their expansionist ambitions by fueling instability in the region. Now, this cannot be allowed. At this conference today, I hope that the countries that have shown the courage to recognize the state of Palestine will follow through on this historic stance with determined, concrete, and deterrent steps. It is now necessary to declare a ceasefire, ensure unhindered access to humanitarian aid to Gaza, and for Israel to withdraw its forces from Gaza. Apologies. I cannot hear the president. I lost his voice. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. This is the interpreter speaking. I cannot hear the president. His voice is gone. His voice is gone. We cannot hear him. Me and my colleague, we cannot hear the president. Apologies for this, but we're having a technical glitch here. We cannot hear the president. We stopped being able to hear him. His voice is gone completely. Sorry, but we cannot hear the president. His voice is gone completely. We stopped being able to hear him. And right next to our booth, we have colleagues from, we believe, the Brazilian delegation, the Portuguese booth, and I can see them from the window. They cannot hear the floor either. We cannot hear the floor. We cannot hear the floor. Oh, it's back.
Au président du Brésil.
I give the floor now to the President of Brazil.
I would like to commend President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman for leading this important process and event. The question of Palestine arose when the General Assembly adopted the so-called Petition Plan 78 years ago. The session in which it was approved was chaired by Brazilian Osvaldo Aranha. On that occasion, the two-state perspective was born, but only one materialized. The conflict between Israel and Palestine is the paramount symbol of the obstacles faced by multilateralism. It shows how the tyranny of the veto sabotages the very reason for the UN's existence, of avoiding atrocities like the ones that motivated its founding from happening again. It also goes against its universal vocation, blocking the admission as a full member of a state whose creation derives from the authority of the General Assembly itself. A state is based on three pillars: territory, population, and government. All have been systematically undermined in the Palestinian case. How can we talk about territory in the face of an illegal occupation that grows with each new settlement? How do you keep a population in the face of the ethnic cleansing we are witnessing in real time? And how do you build a government without empowering the Palestinian Authority? As the Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territories pointed out, there is no more appropriate word to describe what is happening in Gaza than genocide. Therefore, Brazil decided to become a party to the case submitted by South Africa to the International Court of Justice. The terrorist acts committed by Hamas are unacceptable. Brazil was emphatic in condemning them. But the right to defense does not authorize the indiscriminate killing of civilians. Nothing justifies taking the lives or mutilating more than 50,000 children. Nothing justifies destroying 90% of Palestinian homes. Nothing justifies using hunger as a weapon of war, nor targeting starving people seeking help. 500,000 Palestinians do not have enough food, more than the population of Miami or Tel Aviv. Hunger does not afflict the body only, it shatters the soul. What is happening in Gaza is not only the extermination of the Palestinian people, but an attempt to annihilate their dream of a nation. Both Israel and Palestine have the right to exist. Working to achieve a Palestinian state means correcting an asymmetry that compromises dialogue and obstructs peace. We salute the countries that recognize Palestine, as Brazil did in 2010. We are already the vast majority of the 193 members of the UN. Brazil commits to strengthening controls on imports from illegal settlements in the West Bank and maintaining a suspension of exports of defense materials, including dual-use materials that could be used in crimes against humanity and genocide. Given the Security Council's failure to act, the General Assembly must exercise its responsibility. We support the creation of a body inspired by the Special Committee Against Apartheid, which played a central role in ending the South African racial segregation regime, securing
Madam President of the General Assembly, Mr. Secretary General, Monsieur le Président de la République française,
President of the French Republic,
the Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Mr. President of the Palestinian state, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen,
Portugal formally recognized the state of Palestine as a sovereign state with full rights. This decision reflects our conviction that the two-state solution is the only viable path for a just and lasting peace in the Middle East. By reaffirming it here, Portugal seeks to contribute to a broader international effort towards peace, justice, and stability. If we do not act, the crisis will leave scars for generations, fueling extremism and further instability. So, humanitarian access must be ensured without delay. All hostages must be released. Terrorism like October the 7th can never be justified, and civilians, regardless of nationality, religion, or ethnicity, must be protected at all times, and therefore a ceasefire must be attained immediately. Portugal's commitment to peace in the Middle East has been constant and clear. We have always defended the two-state solution in line with the United Nations resolutions and the 67 borders. We supported Palestine's observer status in 2012, voted to enlarge its rights in the Assembly in 2024, and endorsed the New York Declaration earlier this year. We welcome the unprecedented commitments made by the Palestinian Authority in the context of the New York Declaration. We recognize that both countries continue to face security threats, which must be addressed through dialogue, cooperation, and the pursuit of a just and lasting peace. Portugal's recognition of the state of Palestine is not an isolated gesture, but a continuation of a long-standing policy and a decisive contribution to the safeguarding of the two-state solution. Excellencies, Portugal stands ready to work actively towards this collective endeavor. Our message is clear. Recognition of the state of Palestine is recognition of peace itself. Now, today, tomorrow would have been too late. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I thank the President of Portugal. I now give the floor to the President of Indonesia.
His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, President of the French Republic, His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as the co-chairs of this distinguished meeting. Co-chairs, Excellencies, distinguished representatives of the United Nations, I wish to extend our deepest appreciation and highest regards to the governments of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their leadership in convening this important deliberation. It is with a heavy heart that we recall the ongoing unbearable tragedy in Gaza. Thousands of innocent lives, many of them women and children, have been killed. Famine looms. Human catastrophe is unfolding with our eyes. We condemn all acts of violence against innocent civilians. Therefore, it is today with dignity that we gather to take our historical responsibility. This responsibility speaks not only to the fate of Palestine, but also to the future of Israel, and also the very credibility of the United Nations. We condemn all violence against innocent civilians. Therefore, Indonesia once again reiterates its commitment to the two-state solution in the Palestine problem. Only this two-state solution will lead to peace. We must guarantee statehood for Palestine, but Indonesia also declares that once Israel recognizes the independence and the statehood of Palestine, Indonesia will immediately recognize the state of Israel, and we will support all guarantees for the security of Israel. The New York Declaration has provided a peaceful and just pathway towards peace. Statehood must mean peace. Recognition must mean a real chance towards lasting peace. It must be a real peace for all sides, for all parties. Distinguished Excellencies, we commend the leading states of the world that have taken this principled step. France, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, Portugal, and many other leading countries of the world have taken a step on the right side of history. The recognition of the state of Palestine is the right step on the right side of history. To those who have yet to act, we say, history does not stand still. We must recognize Palestine now. We must stop the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Ending the war must be our utmost priority. We must overcome hatred, fear. We must overcome suspicion. We must achieve the peace that is necessary for the human family. We are ready to take our part in this journey towards peace. We are willing to provide peacekeeping forces Thank you very much. Peace. Peace now. Peace immediately. We need peace. Thank you very much.
Je remercie le président de l'Indonésie.
I thank the President of Indonesia. I now give the floor to the President of Senegal.
Messieurs les co-présidents,
Co-chairs, dear colleagues, Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, I commend the leadership of France and Saudi Arabia, and I commend the commitment of all here present to the Palestinian cause. This conference is being held at a time when the world's conscience has been shaken to its very core by the indefensible situation in Gaza. That situation has gone beyond all limits. We are witnessing an indescribable tragedy bearing all the hallmarks of ethnic cleansing. In the face of such inhumanity on such scale, to say nothing, to do nothing is not an option. That choice would even be passive complicity. We are here to recall the very meaning of the founding principles of the United Nations: the sovereignty of peoples, equality of rights, peace through justice, the respect of international law, and the protection of civilians, even in times of war. These are all values that have today been annihilated and which now lie under Gaza's rubble. Senegal reaffirms its unwavering commitment to a two-state solution, with Palestine and Israel living side by side, each within safe and internationally recognized borders. That was the goal of the partition plan for Palestine decided upon by the United Nations. This is also a demand for peace and security for the peoples of the two countries. This is a call for justice and humankind. It is for this reason that Senegal supports the outcome document of our meeting prepared by the ministerial conference held last July. My country at that conference co-chaired the round table on compliance with international law. To make a difference, we must together send out a clear message. The occupation must cease. The suffering of civilians must cease. We must work towards an immediate ceasefire. Israel must stop its bombing and authorize the delivery of humanitarian aid by the United Nations. The United Nations must consider deploying a stabilization and observation mission to guarantee that Israel's illegal actions stop. In brief, the promise of two states must finally be fulfilled. In this connection, I commend the recent adoption by the UN General Assembly of a resolution for a peaceful two-state solution that was adopted by an overwhelming majority. The Senegal also commends the historic decision taken by countries that have today decided to recognize the state of Palestine. As chair of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, Senegal will continue to get on board with any initiative aimed at fostering the return of a lasting peace to Palestinian lands. I appeal here to the world's conscience. Here, we're not looking to pit one side against another or to choose between them. But what we're looking to do here is to defend life, to ensure the voice of reason and law can ring out, and to preserve what makes our common humanity, that is, our capacity for empathy, justice and solidarity. It is time to take tangible measures to create a viable Palestinian state. I thank you.
Je remercie le président.
I thank the President of Senegal. I now give the floor to the Sovereign Prince of Monaco.
Cher co-président,
Dear co-chairs, President of the General Assembly, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for having convened this conference and invited us to it. Since the very beginning, we have spoken out as the Principality of Monaco loud and clear to defend indissociable rights, that of Israel to live within safe and recognized borders and to enjoy security therein, and the right of the Palestinian people to have a sovereign, viable and democratic state. Today we wish to reaffirm our unwavering support to Israel's existence, and we also wish to recognize Palestine as a state under international law. That is what I'm doing here before you now. The 7th of October 2023 was in its full horror the starting point of the current chaos. It is now more urgent than ever before to move towards a tangible, balanced and sustainable solution based on mutual recognition and the respect for fundamental rights. This as soon as all hostages have been released and as soon as Hamas has been disarmed. Peace cannot remain a dim prospect on the distant horizon. It must be given its lifeblood in institutions with mutual guarantees and ensuring the effective respect for everyone's rights. The Principality of Monaco is aware of its place in the House of Nations. We continue to affirm that only a solution based on the existence of two national entities living side by side in dignity and mutual respect will pave the way towards lasting stability. Peace cannot be issued by decree. It is built through common will. Thank you.
Je remercie le...
I thank the Sovereign Prince of Monaco. I give the floor to Prince Faisal bin Al Saud.
شكرا. إلى فخامة
Thank you. I give the floor to His Excellency, the President of South Africa.
Your Excellencies, would like to thank France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this very crucial conference. This is a moment of great significance, not only for the people of Palestine, not only for the people of Israel, but for all people who cherish the ideals of freedom and self-determination. Shortly after the United Nations was created, the General Assembly adopted Resolution 181, which recommended the creation of two states, Israel and Palestine. Immediately after the adoption of this resolution, only one state was created, the State of Israel, casting and ushering the Palestinians into a decades-long wilderness of statelessness, characterized by decades of occupation and now genocide. I'd like to congratulate the President of France, President Macron, for today announcing a very bold decision to support the long overdue creation and the recognition of the sovereign state of Palestine. President Macron, I stand here to congratulate you and to congratulate others who have taken this step. South Africa reiterates its firm commitment to the creation of a contiguous Palestinian state existing peacefully side by side with the State of Israel along the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. South Africa condemned the 7th October attacks by Hamas that resulted in the deaths of more than 1,200 people. In response to this attack, Israel has unleashed disproportionate punishment against the people of Palestine. And we say here today that the only solution to this conflict is a two-state solution. The viability of a two-state solution depends on full and universal respect for international law. All states, including the State of Israel, must comply with the collective obligations under international law. As the UN marks the 80th anniversary, we call on all member states to recognize Palestine and to act in solidarity with its people. To restore the prospects of a two-state solution, we call, firstly, for global recognition of Palestine and its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Secondly, the immediate ceasefire and an end to the genocide and the release of hostages by Hamas and prisoners by Israel. Thirdly, the full respect for international law, including the respect for UN resolutions and opinions and the decisions of the International Court of Justice. Fourthly, the removal of obstacles to the two-state solution, including a halt to illegal settlements and removal of the separation wall. Lastly, the restoration of the humanitarian aid and reconstruction of Gaza. This is a conflict that has gone on for almost as long as the United Nations has existed. And we say that as the international community, this conflict must end now, and we as the international community must act now also in unison. We must now work together to achieve a just and peaceful and lasting solution. I would like to welcome the demonstrable groundswell of support for the establishment of the much-awaited state of Palestine by 142 nations.
The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
The President of South Africa. والآن أعطي الكلمة.
I now give the floor to His Excellency President of Angola.
Your Excellency Emmanuel Macron, President of the French Republic, Your Excellency Sheikh Faisal Al Saud, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, co-chairs of this special session, Excellencies, I would like to welcome the holding of this important international conference, which confirms the commitment of the United Nations member states to the urgent search for a peaceful, just and lasting solution to one of the most complex conflicts on the planet and the oldest in the Middle East. A special mention should be made to the French Republic and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which have committed themselves very firmly and tirelessly in conducting this initiative. His Excellencies, in the context of this meeting, the New York Political Declaration on Peaceful Resolution of the Issue of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution, adopted on September 12 this year by the United Nations General Assembly, assumes unquestionable relevance as it demonstrated that there is an increasingly growing international consensus on the need to end the war in Gaza based on the effective implementation of the two-state solution. This conflict, which lasted for decades and has an unusual level of violence, will not be resolved, as all evidence show, by resorting to weapons, no matter how sophisticated they may be. The international community, which is increasingly aware of this fact, must use urgently all means at its disposal to convince the belligerents that the only way out of this situation is through dialogue, to achieve a definitive peace based on the creation of the State of Palestine and peaceful coexistence between the two peoples. This is the position of the African Union, which also includes the principle that the East Jerusalem should be the capital of the independent and sovereign state of Palestine, and that the Republic of Angola is unconditionally aligned with the African Continental Organization in this effort, in which we all are committed to the definitive resolution of this conflict. Excellencies, we are following with deep concern the alarming reports about the catastrophic humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, where entire communities, including many children, succumb daily to hunger and survive in subhuman conditions. Africa in general, and the Republic of Angola in particular, we have a firm position of condemnation of terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, and within this principle, we condemned the action that results in the death and kidnapping of a large number of people in Israel by Hamas. Therefore, we demand their urgent and unconditional release as a step towards creating the necessary condition for dialogue. Along with our unequivocal condemnation of this act of deliberate violence perpetrated against Israel civilian by Abbas, we also repudiate the disproportionate reaction of the State of Israel with the use of fighter jets, bombers, tanks, and heavy artillery against not conventional army, but against defenseless civilian population of Palestine, journalists, medical personnel, employees of United Nations and humanitarian organization agencies under the pretext of persecuting Hamas. We also condemned the instrumentalization of humanitarian assistance as a weapon of war due to its profoundly inhuman and difficult to justify. In the face of this tragedy, it is urgent that we call for an immediate suspension of measures that obstruct and jeopardize the fundamental rights of population of Palestine, including the right to life, medical care, and food. We view with great concern these acts of war carried out selectively by Israel in several countries in the region, in total disregard for the norms of international law and principles and values of the United Nations charters, that do not produce other effect than lead to the resurgence of tensions and instability in the Middle East by destroying the prospect of resolving the conflict through dialogue and negotiations. Excellencies, the Republic of Angola, in an act of coherence and historic anticipation, formally recognize.
The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
I thank His Excellency, President of Angola, and I now give the floor to the Prime Minister of Australia.
President Macron, Your Royal Highness, Secretary-General, colleagues. In 1947, Australia was proud to be the first member of the United Nations to vote for the plan that made the modern state of Israel possible. But that plan always encompassed two states, a state of Israel and a state of Palestine, living side by side within internationally recognised borders, recognising each other's right to live in peace and security. 8 decades ago, those hopes were consumed by conflict, and that has been the grim pattern over the years. Opportunities not taken, compromises rejected, good faith betrayed, a cycle of violence that has crushed generations. We saw that in the horrific events of October 7, 2023. Hamas terrorists descending on a festival promoting friends, love and infinite freedom to perpetrate atrocities. One Australian, Galit Carbone, was among those killed. Australia embraces all who carry the weight of grief. We repeat our call for the hostages to be returned immediately and with dignity. And we stand with Jewish people everywhere who feel the cold shadow of history's darkest chapter in any act of anti-Semitism. Throughout this conflict, Australia has supported calls for a ceasefire because every innocent life matters. Every Israeli life, every Palestinian life. Right now, Gaza is in the grip of a humanitarian catastrophe, and the Israeli government must accept its share of responsibility. Tens of thousands of civilians have been killed. Desperate people, including children, denied vital aid. Aid workers killed, including Australian Zomi Frankham. Journalists killed trying to bring the truth to light. This comes alongside the continued illegal expansion of settlements on the West Bank and an increase in settler violence. Threats to annex parts of Palestine and permanently displace the Palestinian people. Such conduct risks putting a two-state solution beyond reach. That is where the current road leads. We must choose a different path. We must break this cycle of violence and build something better. Yesterday, Australia recognised the state of Palestine. We have been clear. The terrorist organisation Hamas can have no role in Palestine's future. Our recognition was predicated on commitments from the Palestinian Authority, reaffirming Israel's right to exist in peace and security, that Hamas turn over its weapons to Palestinian security forces and never controls Gaza again, and the PA must demilitarise, hold democratic elections and undertake wholesale reform to governance, finance and education. The leadership of the Arab League has added strength to these commitments. Their demand for Hamas to surrender its weapons and end its rule in Gaza has helped create this historic opportunity, a chance to deliver self-determination for Palestine in a way that permanently disarms Hamas and drives them from the region once and for all. Recognising the aspirations of the Palestinian people is about more than a seat, a voice and a vote in the councils of the world. It is about real hope for a place to call home. This is the same hope that sustained generations of Jewish people, the same hope that binds us all to our countries and cultures and drives us to want a better life for our children. Working together, we can build a future where instead of children in Gaza dying in pain, living in fear or being taught to hate, they can go to school and build a life in larger freedom. That future depends on recognition being followed by reconstruction and reform, a credible cooperative peace plan supporting recovery in Gaza and security for Israel, establishing governance and excluding Hamas on the day after and every day after that. This is the next step we must take, and we must take it together. I thank you very much.
I would like to thank His Excellency and give the floor to His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Egypt. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, Your Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, President of the Republic of France, Your Highness Prince Farhan, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Saudi Arabia, Your Excellency António Guterres, United Nations Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me at the outset to commend the efforts made by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Republic of France to organize this important conference. This conference embodies our collective commitment to the two-state solution as the only way to achieve a just and comprehensive peace in the Middle East. On behalf of Egypt, which for more than 40 years has led efforts to establish a just peace and stability in the Middle East, I address you today. Today more than ever, we need to emphasize that there will be no stability in the Middle East without a just and comprehensive solution that meets the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people to establish their independent state on the lines of the 4th of June 1967 with East Jerusalem as its capital. To put it bluntly, the two-state solution is not just a political choice or a moral obligation. Instead, it's a security imperative. The only path to a secure, stable, and prosperous Middle East is to guarantee the Palestinian people's right to freedom, dignity, and independence. Security will not be achieved in Israel through military force or attempts to impose a fait accompli. Ignoring Palestinian rights will only bring about more escalation and instability. The lack of a political horizon will open the door to more violence and radicalism. This has been proven by the successive developments in our region, especially over the past 2 years. In this vein, I would like to stress Egypt's full condemnation of the ongoing Israeli aggression against the Palestinian territories and throughout the region. This includes the dangerous precedent of bombing the brotherly state of Qatar, which joins Egypt in the mediation effort to end the aggression on the Gaza Strip and restore stability. Ladies and gentlemen, the adoption of the New York Declaration by the General Assembly is a historic moment to renew the international community's commitment to fulfill the right of the Palestinian people to an independent state. Egypt hopes that this conference will see immediate, broad, and unconditional recognition of the State of Palestine by the states that have not yet taken such a step. However, what is required of us today is to build on these developments. We need to take practical steps to relaunch a genuine peace process with a specific time frame. This will bring about a just and sustainable solution based on the recognized resolutions of international legitimacy. Egypt continues to make all effort to reach a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. We clearly believe that reaching a ceasefire and ending the bloodbath in Gaza is possible, as it is obligatory and necessary. The report of the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry raises the alarm bell. It awakens every human conscience. Its findings were clear in confirming that Israel committed the crime of genocide with its material and moral elements against Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to stress that Egypt rejects any attempt at trying to displace the Palestinians or liquidating their cause. This amounts to the crime of ethnic cleansing. Thus, Egypt will, as soon as we reach a ceasefire, will host an international reconstruction conference in the Gaza Strip to mobilize the necessary funding for the Arab Islamic Reconstruction Plan in coordination with the government of Palestine. This will ensure that the Palestinian people will remain on their land, and it will help them overcome the huge losses caused by the aggression. I call upon all our partners in the international community to contribute to this reconstruction effort and early recovery as part and parcel of any serious move to make the two-state solution a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, we stand today in a pivotal moment. Either we establish a just and lasting peace that opens doors of hope for our peoples, or we leave the region hostage. The sound was cut off. I would like to thank His Excellency the Prime Minister for his statement and give the floor to the Prime Minister of Spain.
Excellencies, whilst the recognition of a Palestinian state is urgent, it is all the more urgent that there exist a Palestinian people in the state that we're claiming to recognize, and regrettably the Palestinian people are being annihilated. For this reason, in the name of reason, in the name of international law, and in the name of human dignity, we have to stop this slaughter now. At this precise moment, bombs continue to fall indiscriminately on the civilian population in Gaza. Hunger is killing women, older persons, and children. Today, we take a crucial step forward in calling for a two-state solution at this conference. But let us be lucidly clear, there is no solution possible when the population of one of those two states is the victim of a genocide. We are all well aware that the only hope that civilians in Gaza have is that of knowing that the world does not forget them, and this conference nurtures that hope. It is an act of moral rebellion, an uprising against indifference and forgetfulness. Let us make this conference too a collective commitment to halting brutality and to paving the way for peace. Excellencies, this conference marks a monumental step forward, but it is not the end of the road. It only is and can only be the beginning. As such, I want to make two proposals. First, the State of Palestine must be a fully fledged member of the United Nations. As soon as possible, we must conclude the procedure to admit the State of Palestine to this organization on an equal footing with the rest of states herein. Secondly, we have to immediately adopt measures to halt the brutality and make peace possible. Spain, of course, will adopt a plan with measures to halt the genocide in Gaza. We will continue to take brave measures shoulder to shoulder with anyone who wishes to join us, because Gaza needs it. Excellencies, history will judge us, and its verdict will be brutal with those that perpetrated this slaughter and with those who remain silent or turned a blind eye. We need to take a step forward so that reason can prevail, for diplomacy, for the respect for international law, for IHL, for common sense, and the most basic values that we hold as humankind. Let us make the 22nd of September the day that we remember as the first major step forward. Today, more than ever before, we cannot be indifferent to injustice. Thank you.
أشكر دولته على مداخلته والآن أعطي الكلمة.
I thank the President of the Government of Spain for his statement, and I give the floor to the Prime Minister of Canada.
Your Excellency, Monsieur le Président de la France, Your Excellency Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, Since 1947, it has been the policy of every Canadian government to support a two-state solution for lasting peace in the Middle East. This position envisioned the creation of a sovereign, democratic, and viable state of Palestine, building its future in peace and security alongside the State of Israel. Over many decades, Canada's commitment to this goal was premised on the expectation that this outcome would be eventually achieved as part of a negotiated settlement. Regrettably, this possibility has been steadily and gravely eroded, including by the pervasive threat of Hamas terrorism to Israel and its people, culminating in the heinous attack of October 7th. The accelerated building of settlements across the West Bank and East Jerusalem and the soaring settler violence against Palestinians. Actions such as the E1 settlement plan and the Israeli government's contribution to the humanitarian disaster in Gaza. Hamas
sows terror among the Israeli people and has oppressed the people of Gaza. That has prompted us to take the position we have. Hamas must absolutely release all hostages, disarm fully, and never play any role in the future governance of Palestine.
Stolen from the Palestinian people, chased them and cheated them from their life and liberty, and it can in no way dictate their future. But Excellencies, the current Israeli government is working methodically to prevent the prospect of a Palestinian state from ever being established. Il poursuit sans relâche l'expansion.
And tirelessly continues settlement expansion in the West Bank. That is illegal under international law. Its constant aggression against Gaza has claimed the lives of tens of thousands of civilians. It has compelled the displacement of more than 2 million people and caused a devastating famine. Another violation of international law.
Proud policy of the current Israeli government that there will be, and I quote, no Palestinian state. In this context, Canada recognizes the state of Palestine and we offer our full partnership in building the promise of a peaceful future for both the state of Palestine and the state of Israel. Excellencies, Canada is under no illusions that this recognition is a panacea. This recognition is, however, firmly aligned with the principles of self-determination and fundamental human rights in the UN Charter, and it is fundamentally consistent with the policy of the Canadian government for generations. We take this action as part of a coordinated effort led by France and Saudi Arabia, a coordinated effort to provide the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. Recognizing the state of Palestine, led by the Palestinian Authority, empowers those who seek peaceful coexistence and the end of Hamas. It doesn't legitimize terrorism. And in no way does it compromise Canada's steadfast support for the state of Israel, its people, and their security, because that security can only be ultimately guaranteed through the achievement of a comprehensive two-state solution. Canada
will take the efforts it needs to make to support the Palestinian Authority in implementing its program.
With our international...
The microphone has been cut off.
I thank the Prime Minister of Canada for his statement. I give the floor to the Prime Minister of Ireland.
Presidents, co-chairs, may I begin by thanking France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening us today, and I commend them for their leadership on this most vital of issues. Those of us gathered here know that the only viable option to deliver a peaceful future for Israel and for Palestine is a two-state solution. At this most critical juncture, we must continue to put our full political weight behind it. The situation on the ground has rarely looked so bleak. A just and lasting peace seems further away than it ever has. But in our own peace process in Northern Ireland, to a conflict of 24 years' duration, we recognised that even in the darkest of days, we had a duty as leaders to keep the flame of hope alive and to keep talking. The immense suffering of the Palestinian population in Gaza over the past 2 years has been an affront to the world. It has horrified people around the world, nowhere more than in Ireland, where people have been moved to sorrow and to anger. What happened to Israel on the 7th of October was a horrific and brutal attack on an innocent civilian population, and Hamas must be held to account for its actions. It was an appalling act of crime, war crime. But it cannot justify what has happened since. More than 65,000 people killed in Gaza. Horrifically, more than 20,000 of them children. The use of food as a weapon of war, with scarcity becoming hunger, becoming famine. Hospitals attacked, homes and schools destroyed, thousands of years of culture wiped out. People shot as they desperately seek food for their families. Doctors, aid workers, journalists targeted and killed. We have reached a point where what has been credibly described as a genocide is being carried out in front of the eyes of the world. It would be easy to just despair, but we must not. Gaza must move us to action. And there are still humanitarian workers, medics, journalists determined to do their best for the people of Gaza and for Palestine. They are doing so with the most extraordinary courage and without regard to their own safety. To honour them and the Palestinian people, it is right that we as political leaders play our part too. And the only way to end the appalling cycle of violence is to forge a political path. And the only credible destination is a two-state solution, with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. And that is why Ireland last year, with Spain, Norway and Slovenia, recognised the state of Palestine. I commend those who have taken the decision to recognise the state of Palestine this week, and I strongly urge those who have yet to do so to give it serious consideration. We know that there are people, including in the Israeli government, who are working daily to make that outcome impossible. In addition to the destruction of Gaza, settlements are expanding every day, and illegal settlers in the West Bank are increasingly emboldened and militant. If we do not move now to protect the two-state solution, if we do not work to build a process through which it can be achieved, there may never be another opportunity. That must not be our legacy to future generations. Ireland is ready to play its part, and I look forward to our continuing steadfast cooperation. Thank you very much indeed.
I thank His Excellency for his statement, and I now give the floor to the Prime Minister of Belgium.
Dear Secretary General, dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Belgium has always defended the two-state solution and is today reaffirming once again this position by having joined the co-signatories of the New York Declaration. Only this solution will allow Israelis and Palestinians to live side by side in peace and security. To support this aspiration, since the Oslo agreements, Belgium has provided bilateral funding and technical assistance to the Palestinians for a total amount of around 600 million euros. We also remain committed to meeting the acute humanitarian needs in Gaza. We have recently airdropped over 190 tons of humanitarian supplies to address the most acute needs. The Belgian government has recently decided to add another 12.5 million euros to our humanitarian budget for Gaza, in addition to what has already been disbursed. Full and free access to Gaza for providing massive humanitarian aid is an urgent need, as the famine has been officially recognized by the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, the resumption of settlement activities in the West Bank, particularly the E1 project, the military occupation aimed at the full occupation of Gaza, as well as the indescribable humanitarian crisis, all raise fears today that, in the absence of an international response confirming the need to keep the prospect of a Palestinian state alive, peaceful and sustainable coexistence in two states may no longer be possible. The recent declarations of a number of Israeli ministers, including the Prime Minister himself, that no state of Palestine will ever exist, is an additional reason for reaffirming the right and the need of the Palestinians having their own state. Therefore, Belgium is giving out a strong political and diplomatic signal to the world today by joining the group of countries that announces the recognition of the State of Palestine in the margin of this high-level week of the United Nations General Assembly. We are thus joining the initiative of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as advocated in the resolution adopted by the Belgian Parliament. Through this initiative, we continue to support international law, particularly the right to self-determination of peoples. Let me be clear, however, this step cannot be a reward for Hamas. Conscious of the trauma suffered after the Hamas terrorist attack on October 7, 2023, Belgium will proceed to the legal recognition of the State of Palestine once all hostages have been released and all terrorist organizations, such as Hamas, have been removed from the governance of Palestine. The effective conduct of diplomatic relations with the new State of Palestine, including the opening of a Belgian embassy and the conclusion of international agreements, will be carried out once the objectives of the New York Declaration have been achieved, notably the full demilitarization of Hamas and subsequent the renewal of governments based on presidential and parliamentary elections, giving the Palestinians a democratic, strengthened and renewed authority. All these steps are intended to guarantee the security of both the Israeli and Palestinian population. At the same time, we also strongly call for the recognition of the State of Israel by all Arab countries. Let us be clear, the two-state solution is not dead. It is bruised, but it can be revived, and it must be for the sake of both peoples. I thank you.
We thank His Excellency, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Prime Minister of Norway.
Excellencies, thank you, France and Saudi Arabia, for convening us together in New York today. I would also like to salute the President of the State of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas. I find it an illustration of deep injustice that he was denied entry to be with us today. But his address was reasonable and dignified. Thank you, Mr. President. 32 years ago, the first Oslo Accords were signed, forever creating an association between my country, my capital, and a vision for peace in the Middle East. Ever since, we have worked for one end: peace, security, and dignity for the Palestinians and the Israelis, living side by side in two sovereign states, enjoying the rights and obligations that follow from the Charter of the United Nations. I have followed this closely, now as Prime Minister, previously as Foreign Minister, and also as Secretary General of the Norwegian Red Cross. Today's conference marks a historical high point of international support for and recognition of the state of Palestine. At the same time, the situation on the ground is perhaps the furthest we have been from its realization. The situation in Gaza is catastrophic. The governance structures created by the Oslo Accords are driven to the verge of collapse, and the encroachment of Palestinian territory continues. Yes, it is complex, but it is true. The two-state solution is the only credible path to peace and security for both Israelis and Palestinians. An occupying power cannot have a veto over what happens in a territory it is unlawfully occupying. The Palestinian people have the right to self-determination, as do the Israeli people. Last year, therefore, Norway, along with Spain and Ireland and Slovenia, recognized the state of Palestine. We welcome the recognitions announced this week and last year and today. Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la décision.
And thank you, Mr. President, for France's decision.
The urgent need to stop the violence, improve access to humanitarian assistance, release the hostages, and pave the way for a lasting solution based on the fundamental principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Only last week, this Assembly approved a roadmap of concrete actions to this end. And in July, a broad majority voted the New York Declaration. But friends, there will be no state of Palestine or a body to govern Gaza the day after without functioning Palestinian authorities. Preserving and reforming the institutions that we together have invested in and helped build over the last 3 decades is critical. It is critical for the well-being of the Palestinian population and its desperate hour. And it is critical for peace and security also for Israel. The alternative is chaos or worse. It is the strongest rejection we can come up with of Hamas and terrorism to recognize a Palestinian state under the Charter of the United Nations. Norway will continue to support the Palestinian government, including through emergency funds we are mobilizing with other donors. And we continue to call on Israel to release the tax revenues owed to Palestine. These revenues are desperately needed to fund schools, hospitals, and the police. So, friends, this is a time to stand up and be counted as defenders of human dignity and human rights, as defenders of a world with firm laws and rules, as defenders of peaceful resolutions. For 80 years, the UN has been a family of nations. The state of Palestine belongs to this family. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Prime Minister of Luxembourg.
Monsieur le Président, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in history when the cause of peace demands both moral clarity and political courage. 8 years ago was such a moment. The founding of the United Nations was an act of courage, guided by a clear vision of a world based on universal values and principles of peace, freedom, and justice. Today, again, is such a moment in history. Luxembourg stands here today as a partner to all those who believe that diplomacy still matters, that it can make a difference. We want to remain true to their promise made 8 years ago. Luxembourg stands here today as a partner for peace. We remain convinced that a two-state solution remains the only viable way forward for a lasting peace. Our goal is a safe and secure state of Israel living side by side with a safe and secure state of Palestine. Rarely has the prospect of a two-state solution felt more distant than today, and yet never has the international will to achieve it been more unified. When doubts grow, we must face them with the certainty of hope. That is why I solemnly declare that as of today, Luxembourg formally recognizes the state of Palestine. Recognition is not the end of a process. It is the beginning of a renewed commitment to hope, a commitment to diplomacy, to dialogue, to coexistence, and a two-state solution, to the idea, fragile but still possible, that peace can prevail. We take this step fully aware of its great symbolic weight. It is our contribution to a political process, one that we hope will revive the prospect of a negotiated two-state solution, grounded in the legitimate aspirations of both Palestinians and Israelis. It is fully aligned with the principles that have guided Luxembourg's foreign policy since 1945. Respect for international law, the promotion of a rules-based order, and the values enshrined in the UN Charter. And let me be clear, this is not a decision against Israel or its people, a people with which my country shares strong historic ties, and whose right to live in peace and security we have been fully upholding since 1948. Luxembourg has been and will remain a friend of the people of Israel and Jews around the world. And with the same clarity, let me say that this is not a decision to reward violence or endorse any actor who undermines peace. Luxembourg condemns, in the strongest possible terms, the atrocities of October 7, and we call for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. And in line with the New York Declaration, we expect the Palestinian leadership to live up to the responsibilities of statehood. The road ahead will not be easy. We do not claim this recognition alone will change the course of the conflict, but we hope it will contribute to restoring momentum to the political horizon that has been lost. Peace is not simply declared. Real peace, lasting peace, is built step by step, brick upon brick. Let this recognition be a message to grieving families, to hopeful children, and to all those who have not yet given up. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency the Prime Minister and give the floor to the Prime Minister of Malta.
Excellencies, dear friends, let me begin by stating clearly and unequivocally that the Republic of Malta is proud to confirm our official recognition of Palestinian statehood. We do so as a demonstration of our concrete commitment to a genuine and peaceful two-state solution, as the only solution that will secure the future of both peoples. Malta is equally unequivocal in its support for the right of Israel to exist alongside a democratic Palestinian state. In making this commitment, I am acutely aware of how events have unfolded since the appalling Hamas attacks of October the 7th. They were the despicable work of a terrorist organization which must have no place in the emerging Palestinian state. Since then, Malta has been unwavering in calling for the unconditional release of all the remaining hostages. No ifs, no buts. The hostages must come home now. Malta adds once again its voice to those demanding an immediate and permanent ceasefire. The fighting must stop now. I am also aware of the opinion that recognizing the state of Palestine somehow amounts to a victory for Hamas. A two-state solution, however, is the worst possible outcome for Hamas. It is not what they want to see. They want to see Israel wiped off the map. Malta and our allies want to see Hamas wiped out. We must never forget that Hamas openly and violently opposed all the previous efforts at peace. If Palestinians can see a peaceful and realistic road to nationhood and self-determination, it fatally undermines the siren cries of Hamas. It offers the only hope that there is an alternative to conflict. I ask, what is the other alternative? What is the future that the hotheads on both sides envisage? A conflict without end? Israel under constant attack? A region mired in instability? That is an outcome nobody should want. Instead, with the right to recognition come huge responsibilities for the Palestinian leadership. There must be absolute adherence from the outset to non-violence, and mutual recognition. Hamas must have no role in any shape or form in the future government of Palestine. Malta supports the Palestinians' authority, one state, one government, one law, one gun approach, and the need for urgent, free, and fair elections. Equally, there are urgent responsibilities for the Israeli government. The attacks on civilians and infrastructure must stop immediately. The illegal settler encroachment and accompanying violence in the West Bank must also stop immediately. And unhindered aid under genuine international auspices must be allowed to flow immediately. Starvation is being suffered in Gaza, and the deaths of hungry civilians trying to access the pitiful trickle of food aid being allowed in cannot be allowed to go on. I am not ashamed to admit that I cried after recently visiting the young children we brought over to Malta from Gaza to give them the best medical care our island has to offer and the required prosthesis. These innocent children have had their limbs and the best part of their life stolen away from them. They have also lost their parents, and they have been caused irreparable harm. But we will not allow their hope for a better future to be stolen away from them. And we will protect them. Ibrahim, I promised you that, and we will stick to our word. What is happening is morally and legally very wrong, and we have a duty on all of us to act. We know that the path to a functioning, free, and fair two-state solution is a long and also hard one. We know the dangers that lie along that path, but we also know the greater dangers that arise from saying nothing can be done, that the dream has died. We cannot, and we will not remain silent or complacent. The depth of the current tragedy must be
The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
أشكر دولته.
I thank His Excellency for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of the EU.
Monsieur le Président, Altesse Royale,
President, Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, I would like to thank the initiative of France and Saudi Arabia, the initiative being to gather us at a critical juncture for peace in the Middle East. The region has known far too many wars, far too much violence and terrorism, too many deaths. Today in Gaza, we are facing a humanitarian catastrophe. We see families broken, famine used as a weapon of war. This disaster must end. The European Union once again calls for an immediate ceasefire, unfettered humanitarian access, and an end to insecurity. We want the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. We condemn the military offensive underway in Gaza. We also firmly condemn the violent escalation in the West Bank. We call on Israel to put an end to the aforementioned operations, to stop the illegal settlements. Excellencies, today, thanks to the impetus provided by this conference, the State of Palestine has been recognized by the majority of EU member states. Nonetheless, we must be clear-eyed about the day after. There is no room for Hamas, for terrorism. There is no room for illegal settlements. There's no room for deaths of innocent civilians. Nowhere, neither in Gaza nor in the West Bank, nor in East Jerusalem, nor in Israel. There's only one way forward, and that's the two-state solution. The State of Israel, secure and recognized by all members of this General Assembly, and the State of Palestine, democratic, independent, viable. Two states living side by side in peace. The time for peace has come, and we're duty-bound to live up to the times we face. I thank you.
Monsieur le Président,
President,
ladies and gentlemen, when the night is darkest, we must hold fast to our compass. And our compass is the two-state solution. October 7th has opened one of the darkest chapters in history. We all agree that the tragedy in Gaza must stop right now and all hostages released. But ending the war might not be enough if there is no pathway to peace, if the prospect of two states is no longer viable. And as we speak, the two-state solution is being undermined, and this cannot be, because the only realistic peace plan is based on two states, with a secure Israel, a viable Palestinian state, and the scourge of Hamas removed. Since the beginning of this war, Europe has been the lifeline of the Palestinian Authority. We have put together an unmatched and unprecedented financial package of 1.6 billion euros. But as the very survival of the Palestinian Authority is at stake, we must all do more. And this is why we will set up a Palestine donor group. Any future Palestinian state must be viable, also from the economic point of view. And this can be achieved also with the support of the Palestinians' neighbors. We Europeans will set up a dedicated instrument for Gaza's reconstruction in coordination with other donors' efforts. Gaza must be rebuilt, the Palestinian economy must be relaunched, and I invite all of you to join in the effort to make this happen. Of course, in the end, only the Israelis and the Palestinians can agree on the way forward. But the international community has so much to contribute. We can facilitate, we can rebuild, but most importantly, we can keep hope alive. Thank you very much.
I thank you for your statements. Given the limited remaining time, we ask the Excellencies to limit their statements to 2 minutes, after which the microphones will be cut off. I give the floor now to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy.
President Macron, Minister Faisal, this conference takes place at a crucial time. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is catastrophic. Our position is clear. Italy is against the occupation of Gaza Strip and against any idea of displacement of its population. Italy condemns also the recent attack against Doha, but we encourage Doha to continue in the crucial effort to mediate together with Egypt and the United States to reach a ceasefire. We deplore the decision of the Israel government to expand settlements in the West Bank. We also condemn in the strongest terms, the recent terrorist attacks carried by Hamas against the Israeli civilian population in Jerusalem. We are fully convinced that a path to peace is still possible. Like Pope Leo said, we cannot abandon the hope for peace. Italy strongly supports the dream of the Palestinian people to have a state. We will continue to support the Palestinian Authority in its reform. We will work hard for two-state solutions with the peaceful coexistence of the Palestinians and Israelis. It is the only solution to ensure a future of peace and prosperity in the Middle East. For this goal, it's crucial to reach the ceasefire, the liberation of the hostages, and the assumption of full humanitarian access. From the beginning of the conflict, Italy provided thousands of tons of aid to the Palestinian population. We also organized medical evacuation to cure in Italy hundreds of Palestinian children. We know this is not enough. We must interrupt the cycle of violence. The message from New York is clear. Israel, stop bombing. Hamas, freedom immediately for the hostages. We must focus on the day after. It should meet
The microphone has been cut off.
Minister. I thank His Excellency. وأعطي الكلمة الآن إلى معالي وزير.
I now give the floor to His Excellency Foreign Minister of Algeria. I thank the co-presidency of this conference. Algeria welcomes the convening of this conference, which is the fruit of an international consensus. This consensus is the main guarantor for a just, lasting, and final settlement to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This international consensus is a strong barrier against Israeli expansionist policies under the guise of the Greater Israel myth. This international consensus is the most powerful response to the illusions of the Israeli occupation and its belief that it alone holds the power to veto the establishment of the Palestinian state on the land of Palestine. It is time for concrete action to realize and enforce this consensus on several levels. The first level is expanding the base of official recognitions of the State of Palestine as an irreversible international reality. The second level is enabling the State of Palestine to obtain full membership in our organization, a membership that the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has consistently called for from this very rostrum. The third level is confronting diplomatically, legally, politically, and economically the plans of the occupation to annex Palestinian land and to displace the Palestinian people from their historic homeland. The fourth and final level is the internal Palestinian level. Palestinians have to close ranks and unify their word in order to regain their independence and for their movement to regain its strength and for their voice to regain its influence regionally and internationally. Thank you.
شكرا معالي الوزير.
I thank His Excellency, and I now give the floor to Her Excellency Foreign Minister of the United Kingdom. And I would like to remind you once again that you have 2 minutes, after which the microphone will be cut off.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Your Excellencies, President Macron and Prince Faisal. I stand before you today beneath the emblem of the United Nations to confirm the historic decision of the British government to recognise the State of Palestine. This step, alongside friends and partners, reflects a long-standing truth that statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people and that two states is the only path to security and lasting peace for Israelis and Palestinians alike. But it also reflects a grave reality. The two-state solution that for decades has commanded global support is in profound peril. From continued bloodshed, man-made famine, terrorism and hostage-taking, settlement expansion and settler violence. And Hamas terrorists continue to hold hostages seized in the barbaric attack of October 7th, prolonging the unimaginable anguish of their families. And in Gaza, the unbearable humanitarian catastrophe worsens as the Netanyahu government chooses to escalate war and hold back aid, children dying of starvation while food rots at the border. And settlement expansion threatens the very viability of a Palestinian state. The two-state solution risks disappearing beneath the rubble. That is what extremists on all sides want, but we refuse to let hope be lost. Recognition is born of urgency and principle, alongside our unwavering support for the security of Israel and its people. This pathway is the opposite of Hamas's hateful vision, and this process around recognition has helped cement the rejection of Hamas across the Arab world, alongside new reforms to the Palestinian Authority, because there can be no role for Hamas in the future governance of Palestine. But recognition must be a spur, not a substitute for urgent action. A ceasefire now, the release of all hostages, the restoration of aid, and a lasting framework for peace. Recognition is about the future, but it is rooted in our past. 75 years ago, Britain was rightly proud to recognize the State of Israel. But the promise of upholding Palestinian rights has gone unfulfilled. For decades, my country supported a two-state solution, but only recognized one state. That changes now, as we join more than 150 member states in recognizing the State of Palestine and protecting the pathway to peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvette.
أشكر معالي
I thank Her Excellency, and I now give the floor to the Foreign Minister of Mexico.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. President, Excellencies, we are all concerned by the grave crises in the Middle East. It requires urgent actions, and it's on all of our minds. Since our meeting in last July, we have seen confirmation of a famine in Gaza, and the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory has concluded that genocide has been committed in the Gaza Strip. There is an urgent need for collective actions which put an end to this heart-rending war. We need to see a just, peaceful and lasting arrangement based on the effective implementation of the two-state solutions. This should allow a safe and prosperous future for all countries in the region. The support for the New York Declaration issued by the General Assembly should lead to the establishment of political and security frameworks able to halt the humanitarian crises. We must begin reconstruction and recovery work and guarantee the long-term security of both states. Mexico recognizes these steps taken by all mediating countries to immediately achieve a definitive ceasefire and the release of all hostages. It is our view that a just and lasting and peaceful solution based on international law must be supported by narratives, underpinned by narratives that humanize the problem, counter division, and promote the acceptance of the other. The microphone has been cut off.
Your Excellency, Mr. Minister, I would like to draw the attention of the Minister that his mic is no longer working. Gracias. Thank you, Excellency. والآن أعطي الكلمة.
And I give the floor to His Excellency, the Foreign Minister of Japan.
At the outset, I wish to express my profound respect and sincere appreciation to France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their leadership in convening this high-level conference. Together with Norway, we have had the honor of serving as co-chair of the working group on the economic viability of Palestine, engaging in sincere and constructive discussions with UN member states and international organizations. Urgent action is required to address the fiscal challenges facing the Palestinian Authority, sustained support for the PA, concerted engagement by the international community with Israel, and reforms undertaken by the PA itself. Japan continues to make tangible contributions, including recent financial assistance through the World Bank. Yet today, the situation has reached an extremely grave and alarming juncture that threatens to erode the very foundation of a two-state solution. The sharp deterioration of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the expansion of settlement activities in the West Bank, and steps toward annexations are completely unacceptable. Japan strongly condemns these actions and calls on Israel to immediately cease all such unilateral measures. At the same time, Hamas must release all hostages and disarm. Japan has consistently supported a two-state solution. For my country, the issue of recognizing a Palestinian state is not a matter of if, but of when. While carefully monitoring developments in the region, Japan will continue its comprehensive deliberations with even greater seriousness. Above all, what matters most is that Palestine can exist in a sustainable manner, living side by side in peace with Israel. Japan will continue to play a realistic and proactive role in advancing toward the goal of a two-state solution, even by a single step. Should Israel take further actions that block the path to the realization of a two-state solution, Japan will be compelled to introduce new measures in response. Japan fully supports the aspirations of the Palestinian people to establish their own independent state.
I would like to thank His Excellency and give the floor to His Excellency, the Foreign Minister of Andorra.
Messieurs les Présidents, Excellences.
Presidents, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the situation in Gaza has become unbearable. Civilian victims, mostly women and children, run into the tens of thousands. Humanitarian access has been seriously hindered. Hunger is a weapon of war. Forced displacement has taken on outsized proportions. Faced with this human tragedy, we reiterate our call for an immediate ceasefire and the need to ensure a lasting end is put on this terrible conflict. The only credible path out of this conflict, ladies and gentlemen, is the two-state solution. The 12th September vote did not leave a shadow of a doubt. This assembly, by an overwhelming majority, believes that the Palestinian people should live in peace and security within their own state, side by side with the State of Israel. With this widely shared assessment in mind, the government of Andorra approved the recognition of Palestine. We will continue to forcefully call for the release of all hostages, for the disarmament of Hamas, the perpetrators of the atrocious 7th of October 2023 attacks, and for the advent of a Palestinian state that's been demilitarized and that exists under the reformed authority of a government that excludes Hamas. When the conditions are in place and if we can guarantee the full regional integration of Israel, this recognition will take its effect. With this recognition of Palestine, our country, which is proud of its over 7 centuries of uninterrupted peace, and remains committed to neutrality, multilateralism. The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
Your Excellency. Bravo.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I give the floor now to the Deputy Prime Minister of Slovenia.
Your Excellencies, I would like to thank France and Saudi Arabia. A mutually agreed and sustainable two-state solution is the only viable path forward for peace in the Middle East. This cannot exist without a legitimate and capable Palestinian Authority, which requires reforms but also international support. We cannot allow the region to revert to an ineffective state that leaves a vacuum. It is for these reasons I signed a memorandum of understanding with Palestine last month. The horrifying images of starving children in Gaza are the outcome of deliberate choices. This is a man-made catastrophe. Gaza is enduring what international law defines as genocide. This demands clarity of words and urgency of action. When brute force replaces law, it will not bring security. It will bring instability and radicalization for generations. We insist that law must apply equally to the powerful as to the weak. Slovenia has acted
We recognize Palestine together with Ireland, Norway, and Spain. We call for a permanent ceasefire, the release of all hostages, and the protection of all civilians. We insist that humanitarian aid must flow into Gaza. We are at a turning point. We welcome the most recent recognitions and insist others must follow suit. History will not be kind to hesitation. It will not remember speeches that avoided difficult truths. It will unapologetically remember those who stood silent when genocide unfolded. Let this conference be remembered not as another echo chamber, but as the place where the international community finally moved from words to consequences. And
the speaker's microphone has been cut off.
أشكر معاليها والآن أعطي الكلمة
I thank Her Excellency, and I give the floor to the Foreign Minister of Germany.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, across Gaza, people are living through hell on earth. Tens of thousands of people have died. Hundreds of thousands are starving. Colleagues, the horrendous terrorist attacks of October 7 and the most brutal war that followed have made it very clear. This decades-old conflict cannot be solved by terror, destruction, and death. It can neither be won nor managed. It needs to be resolved. We are well aware that today a two-state solution appears more distant than ever. We are well aware that steps are being taken as we speak to bring it further out of reach. We are meeting today because we are convinced there can be a better future. An independent, democratic, and viable Palestinian state existing side by side and in peace and in security with Israel. A negotiated two-state solution in accordance with international law, one to which no convincing alternative has been presented so far. Colleagues, to bring that future closer, Germany is guided by three principles. First, we do not and will not recognize any changes to the 1967 borders unless agreed upon both parties. Second, we consider Israeli settlements in the occupied territories unlawful and a serious obstacle to peace. And third, we respect the IGC's advisory opinion of 19th July 2024 and act in line with its stipulations. My country will always be deeply committed to Israel's existence, which is still being questioned by some. My country will always be committed to Israel's long-term security.
Microphone has been cut off.
Herr Minister. Herr Minister. Yeah. Herr Minister, Ihr Mikrofon ist ausgeschaltet. Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. شكرا معالي الوزير والآن.
Thank you, Excellency. I now give the floor to the Foreign Minister of Denmark.
Thank you, President Macron and Prince Faisal bin Farhan, for your unwavering effort to push for momentum towards the two-state solution. Denmark has endorsed the New York Declaration and remained deeply committed to build on that momentum. Almost 2 years has passed since Hamas' appalling terrorist attack, and ever since, Denmark has repeatedly condemned the attack, and we continue to insist on the immediate and safe release of every hostage. In the meanwhile, the war in Gaza has created a humanitarian catastrophe of unbearable scale, and Israel is expanding its military offensive. This needs to stop now. Israel needs to change course now. As an elected member of the Security Council, Denmark actively pushes for solutions, urging for an immediate ceasefire, release of hostages, unhindered humanitarian access. Today, the two-state solution is challenged by the war in Gaza, by Israel's direct opposition, expanding of illegal settlements, and threats to annex Gaza and the West Bank. This is why I say today, the keys to recognition of the Palestinian state should no longer lie in the hands of the Israeli government. The Palestinians themselves must be able to fulfill the conditions for the creation of a viable Palestinian state. The key must be in their hands. The Palestinians must become masters of their own destiny. Therefore, Denmark stands ready to recognize Palestine as a state when certain conditions are met. The Israeli hostages are released, when Hamas are disarmed and no longer plays a role in Gaza, when there has been further progress on the PA's reform agenda, and when it is certain, and when there is certainty that a future Palestinian state will be demilitarized. In that spirit, we welcome the strong commitment by President Abbas regarding democratic reform and condemnation of Hamas, confirming that they can have no role in Gaza. Denmark has been at the forefront pushing for
The microphone has been cut off.
Your Excellency, Your Excellency. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Your Excellency, and I give the floor to His Excellency, the Foreign Minister of the Netherlands.
Your Excellencies, today we unite as international community to voice our support for the two-state solution. Allow me to thank France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for providing this opportunity. We must bring an end to this continuous cycle of violence and suffering that Palestinians and Israelis have for long endured. We have both the ability and the obligation to provide hope and a future to those who seek peace and reconciliation. The horrendous war in Gaza must end now, and the worrying tide in the West Bank must be turned. With this in mind, we put our signature under the New York Declaration. And with this in mind, we have taken and will take steps to preserve the two-state solution and alleviate the immense suffering of the people of Gaza. A full course correction is needed, and the steps the Netherlands takes at the national and European level should force Israel to change its course. A legitimate and democratic Palestinian Authority with full control of the Palestinian territories is critical for achieving a viable Palestinian state. Hamas can have no role in future governance, must release all hostages and lay down its arms, and any future solution must guarantee the security of Israel, as we remain fully aware of the intention of Hamas and its likes. The Netherlands will recognize a Palestinian state at a later stage as part of a political process that should commence now. In the meanwhile, we actively contribute, for example, through hosting the Global Alliance or through the Ad Hoc Liaison Committee, and all of the areas identified in the annex of the New York Declaration currently count on Dutch support. We must continue to build on the outcomes of this conference and maintain momentum. An independent Palestinian state alongside a secure Israel.
The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to His Excellency, Minister of State of Qatar.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, Your Excellencies, I would like to express my appreciation to His Excellency, the President of France, and His Royal Highness of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their perception in convening this historic conference for the peaceful settlement of the Palestinian cause under the umbrella of the United Nations. This international movement comes in a very important context. First, a historic context of decades of injustice, occupying the territories of peoples who have been subjected under occupation, taking their land and living under complete destruction in Gaza. At the same time, the West Bank is subjected to reckless practices, annexing land, expanding settlement, and violating the holy sanctities. This is a dangerous threat to international peace and security and to the Middle East. This Israeli escalatory aggression came as a threat to so many countries in the region, including my country. Our capital, Doha, has been subjected to a treacherous Israeli aggression that violated its territorial integrity, led to the killing of 6 martyrs, and put the entire region to the brink of danger. This was a violation of international law and the UN Charter, and we believe that Israel is fully responsible for this rogue aggression, which was condemned by the Security Council and the United Nations. We have participated in the preparation of this conference to come up with a document that will be balanced to ensure the participation of all. Today, we must stress the establishment of a Palestinian statehood with sovereignty. The mic was cut off. Thank you, Your Excellency. I would like to thank you, Your Excellency, and give the floor to His Excellency, the Minister of State in the UAE. Your Excellency, the President Emmanuel Macron, Your Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan, Excellencies, at the outset, I would like to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the French Republic for their concerted effort to organize this conference and the adoption of the New York Declaration by an overwhelming majority at the General Assembly. This would lead to the establishment of an independent, sovereign Palestinian state living in peace and security alongside the State of Israel. We welcome the growing international recognition of the State of Palestine. We call upon the states that have not yet recognized the State of Palestine to do so. In light with the dangerous developments unfolding in the Gaza Strip and the ongoing threats to annex the West Bank and other serious and unacceptable violations, it's imperative that we intensify our efforts to achieve an immediate and lasting ceasefire, release all hostages and detainees, and guarantee full, unconditional humanitarian access across the entire Strip. We have to support the mediation efforts by Egypt, Qatar, and the USA. We call upon the Security Council to uphold its legal and moral responsibilities by taking measures to deter Israel and stop its violations in the occupied Palestinian territories and acts of aggression across the region. We caution that this would have grave risks to regional and international security and peace. The achievement of lasting peace hinges on creating a clear political horizon to establish an independent Palestinian state. It's important to have a legitimate, capable Palestinian national authority that can control arms and be accountable. To conclude, Mr. President, let's pave the way for a lasting, just, and comprehensive peace that fulfills the aspirations of the peoples of the region. Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, and I give the floor to the Vice President of the Vice Prime Minister of Russia.
Distinguished co-chairs, ladies and gentlemen, what's happening in the Middle East has exceeded all thinkable and unthinkable limits over the last 3 years. We've seen an uptick in the terrorist threat, aggressive attacks on sovereignty and the territorial integrity of states, violations of the UN Charter, as well as attacks on sites under AEA safeguards. Before our very eyes, we have seen hunger, man-made hunger. We're seeing queues, people queuing for foodstuffs. 50,000 people, children have died, and many children are suffering from malnutrition. According to the OCHA representative, the city of Gaza has been handed down a death sentence. The Israeli leadership has announced it will be annexing a large portion of the West Bank, building up E1, that sector, and thus doing a blow to the establishment of a continuous state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital. Palestinians are being subjected to unspeakable suffering, as well as having their hopes for a better future taken away from them. And this at a time when we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II and the establishment of the UN. Many states promised the recognition of Palestine some time ago, and today they made good on that promise. They did this 80 years after the adoption of a key decision, Resolution 181 of the UNGA, with the partition plan of former Mandate Palestine into two states. I'd like to remind you that Russia, much like the overwhelming majority of the world's states, 149 states, long ago recognized the legitimate rights of Palestinians to return to their own state. And we did this without waiting for this current human tragedy. The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
I thank you, Your Excellency, for this statement, and I give the floor to His Excellency, the Secretary General of the League of Arab States. Your Excellency, we face an extraordinary moment by all standards and means, while the Israeli occupation is seeking now to bury the project of the Palestinian state on the streets of Gaza. We see the representatives of the overwhelming majority of the countries of the world and at highest levels to save this project. We are here today not to save the Palestinian state only, but to also save some of our common humanity. I would like to remind everyone that the State of Israel was established through a UN resolution, and the the states recognizing Israel had the biggest impact on the fact that it was established and given legitimacy. The UN resolutions stipulated the establishment of Palestinian state to be established alongside Israel, but this state did not see the light of day for several reasons. We have a duty, this important duty, to make this conference a major milestone on a path that is important and a road that is irreversible towards implementing the two-state solution, and for the states to recognize the Palestinian state today. They should also have the duty of protecting Palestinians against systematic killing and the Palestinians against punitive measures that undermine future opportunities and bring us backwards. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank you, Your Excellency, for this statement. This would be our last speaker for this afternoon. The fifth plenary meeting is hereby resumed. I now invite my fellow co-chair to make his statements.
Vous remercier, chef d'État et de gouvernement.
I wish to thank you, heads of state and government, ministers, foreign affairs and official representatives for having participated in this historic conference on the margins of the UN General Assembly. The conference has allowed us to take note of the significant progress that has been made since the conference last July, and we must not and we will not stop here. This collective effort is vital and must continue in the next few weeks if we are to rise to the major challenge of transforming a hopeless ongoing war into a reality of peace and security, which stands the test of time. Time is marching on, given the extremely grave nature of the situation and the collective suffering of civilians. The dynamic we've ushered in today must be followed by rigorous work on Palestine's tomorrow. The Palestinian Authority must be reformed. There must be the laying down of arms, Hamas excluded from government, and other things. This will, if we move forward in this way, there will be able to be a sovereign, independent Palestine state alongside Israel, guaranteeing everyone's security. As we chart this course, our only adversary adversaries are extremism and hatred. Let us give them no ground whatsoever. Ours is the duty to stop Israeli and Palestinians from getting bogged down in an infinite spiral of violence. As the President of the Republic said, time has come for peace. Thank you.
Allow me to make some concluding remarks. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expresses its appreciation to all countries that have announced their recognition of the State of Palestine and its deep appreciation of President Mahmoud Abbas for his unwavering commitment to peace. These recognitions today are not symbolic but reflect a will and a responsibility in fulfilling the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination and decisive action towards ending occupation and make the two-state solution a reality that is irreversible. Based on what we have witnessed today and this growing consensus, international consensus, we will continue to work with all our partners in order to end the Israeli aggression and ensure accountability, achieve sustainable peace and prosperity for Palestinians and all countries in the region. We also thank our partners, the Republic of France, for their constructive efforts and genuine efforts to support the peace and the path of peace. I therefore conclude and we come to the end of the conference for the peaceful settlement of the Palestinian question and the implementation of the two-state solution. The meeting is adjourned.
Congratulations.